If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes. And drop a like and a comment. Thank you. Okay, today we're here with Miss Caroline Ernst with Ayusa. Is that correct? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Ayusa. Okay, so you are the community representative in Northeast Louisiana for Ayusa. So tell our community what Ayusa is and what do you do for them?
Okay, so Ayusa is an exchange student program. We are a J1 visa, so our students are all high school aged, and they are just here to get the cultural experience, see what American high school is like. We always laugh because they see American high school and High School Musical, and they think everybody sings in the cafeterias and jumps up on tables. But then they get in, they're like, okay, this is nothing like that. But so they just come, they want to get better with their English. They want to be around English-speaking people so they can get better with their English and just learn what the American lifestyle is about.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. So getting connected with Ayusa, and then you've actually hosted 3 students in your home.
Yes.
Born and raised in Washita Parish?
No, actually, I'm from West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Yes.
How did we end up here?
I know. My dad was a coal miner. I'm a coal miner's daughter.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
So he got laid off from the mines back in '89, and my uncle was starting up a business down here, and my dad wanted to get away from the winters, and so he wanted to move to the South. So we moved down here in 1989. So I've been here since then. So
89, married?
Yes, I am. I'm married for almost 25 years.
Wow.
And we have 2 kids.
Awesome.
Yes.
How old are the kids?
So my son is a freshman at Tech. He's in architecture.
Oh, cool.
And my daughter is a sophomore at West Monroe.
All right. So what was your first experience with an international exchange student?
Okay, so I had seen so many people. This lady that I knew that was a representative in our area would always post about exchange students and stuff, and I was like, oh, that would be so fun. I was like, I think my family has a lot to give to another student, and so I asked her about the program, what it entailed, and so I asked my husband, and he was like, no, we're not hosting. And I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to pray that God will change his heart. And so about a month or so later, a friend called and said, hey, we have this exchange student coming next week, and they really need a host family. Their family they had a family emergency, and they need a family quick. She's like, and we're hosting too. So I think just a friend doing it made my husband a little bit more comfortable with it.
Right.
And so we said yes. So we said yes on a Wednesday. She came the next Friday. We knew very little about her. We had never seen a picture of her. And so it was very quick our first time, but we loved it. My husband loved it. The kids loved it. They were very young when we hosted our first time. But
so how old was the person? Young lady, young man?
We've hosted 3 girls.
Okay.
So she was in high school. She was our first student was from Slovakia. Our second student was from Italy, and then our last one was from the Netherlands.
So would we say they're probably in the 15 to 17-year-old range?
Yes, they're all 15 to 18.
15 to 18. You know, I just sit back thinking about kids here in the U.S. at 16, they get their driver's license, and we're so afraid for them to even leave the house in it. But then you've got parents across the world that are just packaging their little kid up and say,
I know.
Go out and see the world.
It is wild. I think of my own kids whenever I'm like placing these students. I'm like, I cannot imagine just sending my kid across the pond, what we call it. But I mean, it's just a different culture there. Their kids come and go. They ride subways and trains, right, to get everywhere. So,
well, tell me about the experience with your first student that came over. So you're like green. So this kid, you just meet the kid at the airport and say, hop in the vehicle and let's start chatting.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of how does it go? What was your setup like versus what it is kind of today that you organize?
Okay.
Has it changed some?
It just depends. It's mainly the same, but like for us, because it was a very last minute thing, we didn't even get to pick her up from the airport because we were out of town. And so the community representative brought her to our house.
Okay.
So it was a little different, but I have had families just show up at the airport to pick up students. But normally this time of year, we really start focusing in January to start placing for August students. That gives our families time to, and our last two that we hosted, we got picked in February. And so we were able to build a connection with them over the first few months, just getting to know them so that when they arrived, we kind of were like already family. So,
What is their level of English like when they get here? Does it depend, or is it
yes.
pretty? There's a pretty good English factor. I would think it would be almost a necessity to be able to
Right.
speak.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So they do have to take English tests and scores. And so with Ayusa, they have to rank a certain level to be accepted into the program. So all of our students do speak English very well. Now, you will get some that when they get here, they're like culture shock with English, but after they've been, and in the South, we speak very fast.
Right.
We have a lot of slang. So they're not used to that. But because they're like watching movies and things to get better with their English. But, after a few weeks of being around English all the time, they're pros. They're very self-conscious about it though, because they think they don't speak English well. And so we're constantly assuring them, like, you're doing great. So
Well, what kind of countries do you guys place kids from? I mean, what is there like a core group that y'all have, or it could be anywhere across
we
the
have
world?
over 60 countries that we have students come from. So it's all over the U.S., all over the world. Yes.
So why Northeast Louisiana? When you would think an international student being
Hmm.
able to come to the U.S. probably would be thinking of the things they see in the movies, like
Right.
New York,
Hmm.
Miami, Los Angeles,
Right.
West Monroe, or Monroe. I wouldn't think would be on their
Right.
radar. So how does that selection process?
Well, actually, our students do get the opportunity they have to pay more, but they can select certain areas of the U.S. to be in. I had a student one time, she was actually selected by a family in Alaska, and she got online and saw how cold it was. And so she was like, oh my gosh, I really want to be in the South. So she ended up coming to Louisiana. But what I think is best about Louisiana is they get the American experience and they get the Cajun culture. I just think Louisiana is like the best state to be in because you get the best of both worlds there because Louisiana has the best food, and so I just really like that Louisiana, we have so much to offer our students.
I'm thinking I'm not one that's real big, or I'm not very diverse on my food selection. Now you look at me like Brian will eat anything, but I mean I have my lane. I like to stay in it. And I was having a conversation with a gentleman that's relocating here, and his home is India, and it was
Okay.
just talking about the cultural differences in the food. And I'm like, I hear Indian food is great, but I just don't want to
Right.
step over that line. And I don't know. I'm just a little weird when it comes to
Right.
food. I like my things. I'm a steak and potatoes kind of guy.
Yeah.
And with that being said, uh, from culturally, from the food coming over here, has that ever been a shock to people that to where they just, well,
Right.
they want to stay in their lane, give me ham and cheese, and I'll just live off that for
Right.
my time here?
I mean, most of them are really good at trying things, and exploring a little bit. I mean, I'm the same way as you. I'm a picky eater. And you couldn't tell, but I am a very picky eater, so I get that. And we actually have events with our students where they bring food from their country, and they're like, Miss Caroline, please try this, and I'm like, I don't know, but because I'm the same way. But it's funny because a lot of our European students say our bread is terrible and they love their bread. And so like I'll ask them like at the end of the year, like, what are you most excited about going home for? And they're like, my bread, like, or their meal, their favorite meal,
Sure.
So it's different, but they adjust well to it, and and they even cook some of their traditional dishes for their families and stuff. So it's fun.
From the standpoint of a host home, wanting to
Hmm.
become a host home, what type of preparation does a host home have to have? Do they have to be rich to be able to do this?
No.
Um, Give us kind of a setup of what kind of background checks are
Okay.
done for host homes, and then from a financial standpoint, is there a burden on the family to be able to do this?
Right. So that's like one of the biggest things. I remember a family one time hosted and they were like, man, I thought only rich people could do this. And I'm like, no, anyone can do this, you know. So the criteria to host is you have to do a online application, and part of that is the background check. And then you have to put references down, and I call references, and we do reference checks. So as a host family, you are responsible to feed them. And I laugh at that because people are like, I have to cook 3 meals a day. And I'm like, no, they can, you know, whenever I hosted, we would have cereal or yogurt or something like that they could grab and go for breakfast. And then lunch, we would just pack lunches or they'd eat at school. And then dinner time, I would typically cook or we'd go out to eat. So you have to feed them. And then you have to provide them with a bed. So it has to be an actual bed, cannot be a blow up, a sofa bed, or anything like that. They can share a room with a student. I've had several share rooms. They just have to have their own bed, and they have to be within 4 years of age range to share.
Okay.
But, you know, anytime you go bowling or skating or to the movies as a family, you know, we ask that you would just treat them like your own child and pay for them. But, you know, our students come with money to pay for their cell phone and school fees, school supplies. If they join a sport, they pay for that. You know, things like that. They would pay for themselves.
So they do have the funds that where they're capable of doing extra things that they want to be
Yes.
able to
Yes.
do.
Their families give them money every month.
Now, when you say, what would you say is kind of the financial background for these kids coming over here? Are their families well established? I would think they'd have to be because this couldn't be. I wouldn't think it'd be cheap for a family.
Right. I don't know the exact cost of it, but we do have most of our students pay for it themselves. Their parents pay for them to come on the program. But we do offer we have grant students, and the grant students are funded by the U.S. government and their government. And we have thousands apply for this, and they're in the lower income brackets, you know, and thousands apply, but only a few get chosen for this. So it's like a really big deal to be a grant
Sure.
student. And those are just like some of my favorite because they just appreciate all of my students
But this is just a
everything,
different
but
level of
it
appreciation.
is.
Yeah,
It's very
I can
different.
imagine.
And so, you know, they earned it. They worked hard for it. You know, they didn't just pay their way into it. So but we have both.
From the parents' perspective, how do you feel is kind of a great way for that integration to happen within the family? Is there some uncomfortableness at first? Is there some coaching that you do with host homes to try to prepare that family for the student coming? Is there ongoing touches with the host home of saying, hey, how are things going? Hey, you may try this. We find that this works a little bit better.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking from the stability standpoint or the comfort level from a host home that this is new. They've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
How much walking alongside them do you guys do?
Okay. So we do have we have a host family orientation. So once somebody says they want to want to be a host family, I go out to their house, I meet the family, we talk a little bit like, why do you want to host an exchange student? What do you want to get out of this? What do you want the exchange student to be like? So we kind of set up some goals and some things that they want to expect or things that they want to happen or why they want to host, and I do say let's have low expectations because if you set them really high, you're going to be upset,
Yeah.
So, so we definitely do that. And then whenever I get all my host families right before the students arrive, we have a host family orientation. So I bring all of my host families together and we have a big orientation, like this is what to do when your student arrives. Like we want as many people as the airport. Let's have signs. And when you get home, this is, don't have them make a lot of decisions the first week because don't say, where do you want to go eat? Because they have no clue what we have, right? So, we just low expectations at first, but with the kids, like the little kids, like families that have little kids, they're just like excited to
Sure.
have like a big brother, a big sister, somebody to play with. And, so they're super excited. But I do check in with my students and my host families every month. So every month I'm checking in. How are things going? What did y'all do this month? What did you teach your exchange student about America? What do they teach you about their culture? Because it's a cultural exchange, right? And we want to teach them about America, and we also want to learn about their country. So I say I'm not a helicopter community representative. I'm there if you need me, but I don't want to hover over people and families. But I'm always there if anybody needs me. But they just kind of jump in and have fun.
Now with that if it's set up correctly, if you go from start to finish the right
Mm-hmm.
way, you're finding out early in the year. We're matching people up. Is there some type of like questionnaire the kids fill out, the things they like, the things they don't like, to kind of get the host family, kind of moving in a direction of kind of how to integrate them?
Right. Yes. So all of our students have their own application. And so they put on there like what their top interests are, what are some things they want to do while they're on program. They write they write a host family letter. So they like write a letter like, dear future host family, and most of our students also have YouTubes that you can watch, and they kind of introduce themselves. They tell a little about themselves. They share about their family. And so that's really neat. And so part of my job is matchmaking. Like I see what the host family enjoys and I
Okay.
try to match it with the student on paper, and sometimes that works really well and sometimes it doesn't, and that's just part of the process. But, so I really try my best to match students with families that have the same hobbies and interests. And you can even go to ayusa.org and you can search male or female, you can search an age, you can search a country, you can search hobbies that your family have, and it'll pull up all the students that meet that criteria for you.
Now, as far as getting the kids set up within school and all that, is that an easy process? Is there, um, or how does that process work? Where the school's trying to figure out, where you're at and whatever grade you're getting, and
Right.
does this education translate back to their home country? So if someone comes in as a freshman at West Washita,
hmm
they complete their freshman year at West Washita, straight A's. Does that apply for them when they get back home?
So most of our students know this is a J1 visa, so it's cultural exchange only.
Okay.
So a lot of them this year doesn't count. It's just a gap year for them. Some of our students can take it back and can validate the grades into their system, but not most of them. They don't graduate, from the school system or anything like that. It's mainly just to get in American school and see what it's about.
So would you say that grades are just not that important while they're here?
They have to maintain a C average while on program. So
Okay.
they have to go to school full time. They have to follow all the rules. They can't miss more days. They have to maintain great grades. We check in. As a community representative, I check in with the schools.
Okay.
The students are sending me report cards, making sure they're making their grades. So no, we are definitely staying up on that. But they are very smart students, and so
I would assume that would have an outgoing personality.
yeah,
They're not reserved,
right.
and are striving to do more is the reason that
Mhm.
they would probably want to
Right.
sign up in the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with us being, we're pulling students internationally,
Mhm.
60 countries that can apply for this. Um, we know the world that we live in today. We know our community. We know that in the South, we're considered in the Bible Belt. And
Right.
for many people, that means many different things. But for you and I talking today as fellow believers,
Yes.
you're bringing kids into your home
Mhm.
that probably more often than not don't have the same values or raised with the same values
Yeah.
that you're raising your own kids with.
Yeah.
So, how does Host Homes address that when they come in, um, so that the child, is exposed but doesn't feel, I don't know, pressure
Right.
or
Yeah.
a burden through that, or the family? How does a family navigate that?
Yeah. So Ayusa, we were not a Christian based organization, but me as a Christian, like I just want to love on these kids, and my biggest thing is just to love on them as Christ would and just hope they have a really good experience, and we don't. They're not allowed to change religions while on program, or anything like that because we want to respect, everyone around the world. But just as a Christian, I love going to churches and trying to find Christian families, just to host our students and love on them, because, a lot of Christian families love like Christ. And so they, tend to do really well with our families. But, I've had a lot of non Christians host too, and they've been wonderful too, so it's, as a believer, I like to find, Christian families and homes for our students, but I've had great, with all families, all styles of families.
Well,
And
I guess go just a one level deeper with that.
mhm,
Say the family has a routine of how they attend church and
gotcha.
how
Yeah.
they incorporate that. It's just embedded within their family
Right.
with daily prayers or with family devotionals, with going to
Yeah.
church on Sunday and Wednesday.
Hmm.
How were the host homes instructed to handle that with the child that's
Okay.
coming in?
So on their applications, they put their religion. So they'll put nun or Catholic or Christian or whatever, And so that's part of the matching, like if I have a Christian family, a lot of them want a Catholic or Christian student. But not all the time. It just varies really, but they do have that on their applications. Um, our host families, I set them up as you're not allowed to force them to go to church with you. I encourage my students to go to church with them, just to meet people and to, see what American churches are like. And a lot of churches here have youth groups that do lots of things. So my goal is to get them just involved and plugged into churches and just give it a shot and see, what you think. And I've had students that have loved it and, really thrived in it and really enjoyed the youth programs that these churches have. And they've made lots of friends from just saying yes and trying something new.
Have you had it cause friction before?
I don't think I have. I've never had a student with a family that has had any issues with it.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah. Both families and students have been very respectful.
With the students being here, obviously they'll have their communication where they can call home as they see
Mhm.
fit. But do they also have a line back to you if they feel like something's not working quite right?
Absolutely.
You're kind of
Mhm.
that safe place they can go. And I don't want to make it
Yes.
sound like we have families that's not going to be agreeable, but I also would be naive to the fact that sometimes things don't always go as planned.
Right. Yes.
Are there any cases where that's happened?
Absolutely. Every year. Like normally every year I'm moving one or two students. It's
Okay.
very, very common. So like I always set my families up like, hey, we have matched you on paper, but when y'all get together, it may not work. It may not happen, And so sometimes I do have to move students just because personality conflicts and things like that. It's never been like normally it's never been like host family's been ugly or the student's been rude or anything like that. It's just been some differences and they just didn't mesh well, And so I have had to move students before and it's very common. Nothing bad about the host family or the student.
So we talked before we got started about a mutual friend that we have out there,
Yes.
and I'll go ahead and say, the Stevens.
Yes.
A situation like that happened,
Mhm.
and they were not exactly ready today for it.
Right.
But we have some amazing people in our
Oh,
community
100%.
that are willing to step up.
Yes.
Give me just a little bit of kind of how that worked out and
Okay.
where they're at today with it.
Okay, so their student got here and had a host family and just wasn't working out. Like I said, just the personalities weren't meshing, and the student and the host family both were like, "Oh, this isn't really working." So, so I had to find her a new family, and I laugh because I always make posts on Facebook about hosting an exchange student, and Zach Stevens is always like, "Come on, Pamela, let's do it," and Pamela's like, no, we're going to wait a little while, And so when this happened, this student was in the West Washita school zone.
Right.
And so I knew they were West Washita school zone. So I was like, I posted on Facebook, like, hey, I have this student. She's in West Washita. I'm really trying to find a family because I want to keep them at their school,
Sure.
I don't want to have them to move schools. And so Zach was like, come on, Pamela, let's do it. And so they did it. They were very hesitant, as most host families are when they first start.
It's a disruption, number one,
Yes.
to the way you live your life.
Absolutely.
And then that whole, are we going to mesh? I mean, is this going to be
Yes.
awkward?
Well, and they're very busy people,
Sure.
And so, and I'm a very busy person too. And I'm telling people all the time, like, busy is okay. Like, just our students just jump in and go with you, So Emmy's been to like basketball games and dance things for their oldest daughter, and so she just jumps in with the family and goes where they go, so they have done very, very well with it and have adjusted well. Emmy loves them, they love her, and so, sometimes that happens and they end up having a better experience, so.
Sometimes a mistake or something that's not working right can lead to something very beautiful.
Yes.
And I know that as I know Pamela and Zach, this young lady is fortunate to be with them
100%,
and is going to get to see a lot of
yes.
life, some craziness, I'm sure, but some.
Yes, they took her down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras,
Oh, wow.
and she just,
had to be a treat.
Yes.
That had to be a treat.
Yes.
They're good people for that, and thanks for sharing that story with me. What would you say for a host home? What are a couple of traits in a host home that would lead to great success with an international student? What are some of the traits that you normally see?
I would just say the biggest thing is just being flexible, like we've said, like you're throwing someone else into your family and like how will they adjust to that? So you want families that are just like very flexible, very easygoing. I really like people who just, we have all kinds of students. We have extroverted students, we have introverted students. So really I just look for any family that just has a big heart and is ready just to love on someone and just we say open your heart and your home to a student, because it's true. You're not only opening your home to host a student, but you're opening your heart to grow a little bit more to love someone else.
What would you say when it comes down to like family rules?
Okay. Yeah.
How do you coach your host homes to? We live in probably a more conservative society than a lot of these kids have come from.
Absolutely.
And it seems like we tend to get even more conservative as the more crazy our country tends to be able to get. I know I am with my kids. When I was my kid's age, I had a BMX bike, and I had a 2-mile radius around my house that it was fair game for me to be able to go.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I would never.
No.
I
need to see you.
Yes. I need to know a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, we're not one of these parents that have like trackers on their kids. Everywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm sure one day it may get to
not
that.
Yet, huh?
But how do you navigate? How do you coach the host homes of how to navigate family rules and dynamics when they may not be accustomed to those same things from coming from home?
Yeah, so it is very different. Like I said earlier, like these students are very used to coming and going as they please in their countries. The crime rate is not what it is there, and so it is very different. But we do have our families write out family rules. So one of the things when they first get there, our students, I'm like, give them 2 weeks. After a couple of weeks, to get a little more comfortable with it, where we go over family rules. So I have all my host families write out or type out their family rules. They go over them with the student, and then they both sign them, and then they send it in to me. And that way, because I learned that along the way, because this one kid was like, well, I didn't know that was a rule, and so I'm like, and the host family's like, we told you. But, it is a lot when the students get here.
Sure.
And so with it written down, them sit down and go through it, everybody signs off on it. Like, I know that seems crazy, but it really has helped things go much more smoothly since I've started doing that with my host families and my students. So just setting expectations up for them, and I do tell them, I'm like, not only are you in America, but you're in the South. And, we are very conservative down here, and we like to keep our families close, and we want to know where our students are, and a lot of times it's like, it's not asking really permission to do things, but it's just like keeping them informed, letting them know who you're with, where you're going, and things like that. And I've honestly not had any issues with it. Our students, they have their own rules too coming into this. Yeah. They sign a big Ayusa rule book, and so their expectations, they have orientations in their home countries, and then we have orientations with them when they get here as well. And so they're used to it. And I'm like, you can do it for 10 months,
Now, what's the expectation when it comes to like transportation? A lot of these students are coming from, I would assume a good portion coming from bigger cities that have access to public transportation, which means they can freely travel around to where if you're like Pamela and Zach, I don't know if you know where they live,
Oh, I
but
do.
they are
Yes.
they are not on a beaten path.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
a beautiful place from what I understand, but
It
not on a
is.
beaten path. So public transportation is
Yes.
not going to be accessible, and you have a 17-year-old that wants to start
Right.
interacting.
Yes.
What kind of has that created problems in the past, or are there solutions for some of this?
Yeah, it's not really a problem. Like they come over knowing that the public system in these smaller towns aren't what it is back in their home country. But like whenever I ask my students every year, I'm like, what's been the hardest adjustment? Their answer has always been transportation, getting to where we need to be, because they feel guilty sometimes asking their host family, like, hey, I need to do this. I have practice today, or I have a friend who wants to do this, can I do this? And so a lot of times they do kind of feel bad for asking their host families a lot. But that's why I encourage them to make American friends. Like your friends can drive you, so make some American friends that can come and pick you up and, and things like that. As long as they're making friends, it's not all on the host family. But they also ride the bus to school or home from school. That's very common. They crazily love to ride the bus. It's very different, and so that's like something they enjoy doing, but yeah, so it is like a factor, but overall it works pretty well. But
So the visa that they're here on is just a 10-month visa.
mm-hmm.
So even if they wanted to stay throughout the next summer, that's just not possible.
No.
Do kids have an opportunity to come? The same kids have the opportunity to do it more than once?
No, it's the J1 is only once. They can only do that one time. Yeah.
Share with me some wins that you have seen come from this.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to, because we do live, like Louisiana or West Monroe is a smaller town. So a lot of people, when they come here, they're like, what do y'all do around here? And so I had a family one time, like in Winsboro, and the student was from Vietnam and from big city, and then I had one from China, and they would talk about the pollution and how this is just to let you know, like to give you a little insight of it. Our kids, even though we feel like this is a small town, country living area, they see the green trees and they're amazed. They see the stars at night and they're like, Miss Caroline, I get to see stars. Like I've never seen stars because the pollution is so bad in my country, or, some will have like animals that they get to feed and tend to, and it's just very different for them. I have students that come, they're very timid, they're very shy. And then like this exchange year, I'm like, you have 10 months. These people don't know you, like just be yourself. And like these students really come out of their shell, and it's so fun to watch them grow, just more freedom in themselves, self-confidence, just overall just better people and just learning about themselves and who they are. And it's just so fun to watch from my perspective. And I do want to share this one story. We had our very first exchange student. This is back when Toys R Us was still around. We went to Toys R Us and it was Christmas time, and she walked in and she saw this huge wall of candy canes. And she was like, oh my gosh, a candy cane. And I was like, like we see candy, like there's every flavor of candy cane now, right? And she was so amazed that she got to like touch a candy cane. She's like, I only see these in American movies, and this was several years ago. But it was just so cool, like just as a host family, you get to see America through their eyes, and it will change you forever. It's really neat.
Well, I mean, that you just opened my eyes to something. I'm sitting here thinking, why would somebody want to come to?
Yeah.
That's small-minded of me to be thinking that way. And just to know that there's kids in other parts of the world that have never seen the stars because of pollution.
Yeah.
Or have never been to a park to see trees because they live in such a dense environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all they're exposed to.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. That's really opens my eyes to some things in this area, and just really reinforces to me why we as a community, which I love my community, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, me too.
I was thinking though, I guess my misconception is that if someone is going to send their kid all the way over here, you want to see something grand like you've seen, but every part of our country has something unique and beautiful to be able to offer. Yeah. Even in Winsboro, Louisiana, which is, you don't get, you can get smaller than Winsboro, but I mean, that's pretty small town.
Yes, yes,
Um, but just thinking about kids having animals that they've never been able to be exposed to,
yes.
or
Mhm.
the trees. Are there things that you guys within your organization try to do as a group with the kids while they're here?
Absolutely, yes. So, I do have to meet with my students every month and check in on them. So, I do plan events with them periodically throughout their exchange year. So, typically, the first one I do is a big orientation kickoff. Everybody gets to meet each other. They, you know, change each other's Snapchats and Instagrams, and like I create a little group text for them, and so it's fun for them to get together, and then we set up some expectations. One of the things I do at this orientation is I have my previous year students write a letter to the next year's host
Oh,
exchange student.
that's cool.
So they read the letters, and I have them write a letter to themselves, and then at the end of their exchange year, I give them that letter back. And so they like get a kick out of that. They're like, oh my gosh, like, and they set goals for themselves in this letter. And so at the end of their exchange year, they get to see really how much they changed and how much they've grown and how much they accomplished on their year. So we do that. That's one thing. Thanksgiving time, we do an Ayusa Friendsgiving. So I have all of my host families and students come, and we have a big Thanksgiving meal. I typically do like the traditional American dishes, and then all of my students bring a dish from their home country. And so normally it's a very widespread, but this past year it was so funny because all of them brought a potato based. So we called it I can't remember what we actually phrased it, but it was like a world of potatoes. I don't remember, but it was like everyone brought potato dishes. So it's really funny. But normally, and you're trying different,
Sure.
dishes from around the world. And so I always say, like, even though you're hosting one country, you get to experience way, like, a lot of different countries because we do have these events, and they make friends and invite them over. And one time I had my Slovakian student, we had 11 girls spend the night from all around the world. And so we got to learn so much. So, so we do that in Thanksgiving time. And that's always a fun one. Our host families love that. And then in February, I do a Louisiana Saturday night. And so we get to learn a lot about Louisiana culture. And we go to the Crew of Janus, and they let us look at the floats. They let the students get on a float. They teach them about Mardi Gras and the history behind it. And then after that, we go back to our house, and my husband cooked a big pot of jambalaya and gumbo. We had king cake, and different vendors, bakeries will donate like king cake and macaroons and pralines and all these things for my students to try. So we do that, and it's just like a little fun night. And then we have our end of the year where we're like, okay, we're reading our letters, we're seeing what the year was like. They're writing letters for the next year students, and just kind of ending out the year. So those are
How
our big things.
how emotional is it for these host homes to send these kids back?
Sadly, that's why a lot of them won't host again, because they're like, we were so attached. I'm like, it's better to love and lost than never loved before.
There you go.
Like they're really changing the world by hosting exchange students. And so it is not the best part. But our exchange student, the last one that we hosted, well, actually our first student that we hosted, we got to travel to Europe, and so we flew her down to Greece to be with us. And so then a couple years ago, I was in Germany, and she drove over to Germany to be with
That's
me.
awesome.
And then our last student, she's actually come back. She came home last summer, and she was supposed to come home for Christmas, but school wouldn't allow it. She had some school stuff going on, but we've actually got to travel to the Netherlands to visit her as well. So like we really keep up with them, and with technology these days,
Yeah.
like I see all my students on Instagram, and I still follow their travels and life and what they're doing. So it's 10 months, but it's really a lifetime. Like they're forever your family.
What is the interaction with the student's family with the host home? Is there any interaction with the two families?
Okay, so yeah, so our students, they FaceTime a lot with their families, and so they'll meet over Zoom calls or FaceTime or something like that. But that's really all of it. They just talk through that, or they'll send them pictures of different things the student has done with them or things like that. But As far as like asking permission and things like that, no. That they're, when you're here, you are their guardian, while they're on program. And no, we do have to get like, if the student's traveling by boat or plane, we do ask the natural parents, like, is this okay? But
So if they wanted, like fall break, wanted to go on a trip,
yes, yeah, as long as they're with their host family, they just go and have a blast, But if they're flying or something, we do have to get permission.
from the host family, um, what is, so I know you kind of laid out the parameters that we have to have one bed and
Yeah.
that if they share a room, that can't be within 4 years.
Hmm.
But is this something a retired couple could do?
Absolutely.
Empty nesters,
Yes.
kids with little kids running around, or I mean, adults with little kids running around.
Right.
So it's really, if you're willing to put your yes on the table, you can invest in this organization.
Absolutely. You have to be 21 or older to host, and anyone can host, no matter what stage you're at in life. As long as you have a big heart and ready to love on somebody and show them a great experience and just provide for them. We have had all. I had this one family host, and they had a newborn, and they were like, "No, we want to host. Like, we're excited about this," and they just had the best experience. And so I always say anybody can host. You don't, no excuses.
Would you say the limit is, as far as having international students in this area, is only limited to the number of host homes you can have? That there's probably more kids that want to get placed than what
Oh,
they have?
absolutely. Now I will say some of our schools have limits on how many exchange students they'll take. So that is a factor. And that's why I like to place early, because some of the school placements may be, for instance, let's just say like West Monroe, they'll only accept up to 10 exchange students. So, there's other agencies in town that have place, so, we just have to work together and make sure. I'm trying to like find families early so we can get those places, so that if there is a family in West Monroe Zone, by the time they do say yes, I want to make sure we have school spots available.
What if the host family, I don't think it would be as common just due to the expense, but what if the host family have their kids going to private school?
Oh,
Can
yeah.
can they still send the
Yes, I've had several go. I've had I can't think of all the names of them, but I've had them go to Cedar Creek, OCS, CCS, and even in Winsboro, there was a private school there. But yeah, they go to private schools. The private schools will typically give the exchange students like a little discounted rate to attend the school, so they are very kind in letting our students
that's
do
good
that.
to hear.
So they work with them well. So yeah, so they go to all kinds of schools, and I always say, now I love my public schools, don't get me wrong, but like our private schools, some of them they're a little bit smaller, and sometimes our exchange students can be like, "Oh, I don't want to go to a smaller school," but they get to experience so much more.
Yeah.
Like I had one student that did literally every sport at his school because he just wanted to try it all. He got to try baseball, and he just thought that was the coolest thing, you know. So a lot of times the private schools they have a little bit more opportunity to do things. So, but yeah, all of our schools are great, and just love our exchange students. So.
What would you say is the most rewarding thing for you in what you do?
Oh, man, I guess just like watching them grow personally, seeing these little timid and shy students come over and just watching them bloom into just these amazing humans. And then really just like keeping up with them through the years. Like I'll message them randomly, like, hey guys, check in. Cause I always group chats for them. I'm like, hey guys, I just want to check in, see how you're doing. And just seeing like what all they're doing in the future and how their exchange year has led them to where they're at, and so it's really fun to watch. And my slogan is, you're changing the world one student at a time, because that's literally what you're doing. You're making such an impact on the world just by hosting an exchange trip for 10 months and getting uncomfortable for a little bit.
Yeah, and I would think just a clear assumption on my part that it's not that you don't want their parents' values to instill within them as they grow up, but having an additional set of values
Yeah.
that they can take away back to their home country. We
Right.
have there's really no measure to see what that effect is going to have. But just
Absolutely.
knowing that you had an impact in someone's life
Mhm.
that can take some values that you taught and they're able to go across the world and
Right.
be able to share possibly some of that with other people.
Yeah, and so that's, we hosted first, and that's how I fell in love with the program. I mean, I loved being around all the students and just learning from all them. And so when the job opening came open, they asked me if I'd want to be a community representative, and I jumped on it. Like I was ready to go. And so I've been doing it for 8 years now, and it's just been such a blessing in my life. I love it.
And I would have to assume that there's a blessing that comes onto the host home if they take full
Yes.
advantage of
Hmm.
leaning in and not just providing a bedroom and food,
Right.
but if they truly want to lean in, I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot their family can
Oh,
gain from that.
yes.
I mean, you had someone in your house for 10 months,
Right.
and that could be a lifetime
Yes.
relationship that's established.
Absolutely.
Give me some of the top 3 fears that keep people from being a host home that
Okay.
we can go ahead. Let's bust some myths today.
Okay. Oh, good. I have this thing called Mythbusters that I
So,
do.
so give me, if you can come up with 5, it'd be great, but at least 3. Give me
Okay.
3 myths that we can bust today to ease people in. And people that watch this, let's go ahead and get rid of some of those misconceptions.
Right. Okay. So one of them is, like I said, was Zach and Pamela. Like my top one is people be like, "Oh, we're too busy to host." I'm like, I promise you're not. Like these students want to come and experience as much as they can. And so I'm like, you're never too busy to host. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. So that's one thing I think that keeps people away. Another one is I'm poor. I don't have money to host. You do. It's really not as it is a little bit more. I don't want to downgrade that because it is, but like any kind of family can host. So don't limit yourself. Don't say I'm too poor. I've had students live in apartments. I've had them live in trailers. I had them live in mansions. You know what I mean? Like I've had a wide variety of families, and each one of my students have had an amazing experience. So don't downgrade yourself and say, my house isn't big enough, we're poor, we can't do this. You can. As long as you have love and open heart, you can do it, I promise.
Even in Winsboro, Louisiana.
Even in Winsboro, Louisiana, yes. I guess another one, a big one, is the transportation thing, because that does keep people, they'll be like, well, I work, and the student will have to be home by themselves. And I'm like, well, they can ride the bus, and they like being home for a little bit. I remember our second student from Italy, she would come home, and my daughter was really young then, and she would always want to play school with her when they got home. And she would be like, just let me go rest for 30 minutes. She's like, I've been translating all day in my brain. I just want to lay down. So they enjoy like riding the bus and having that downtime of, while the parents are still at work, just having that breather right after school. And they get their studies home. So when the families get home, they're ready to go and be with the family. So don't let, you working and not being home all the time, stop you, because they can ride the bus, and that gives them some time to breathe a little bit before, the family comes home and they're ready to join the family. So,
Any others that you can think
oh
of?
gosh, I have lots, but I'm trying to think of what all I did because I post these on my Facebook all the time. I guess really just the bedroom situation. Like don't let not having an extra room. The students can share a room. So that's a big one, I think. I've even had students that had their own room, but the girls got so close they shared a room
Right.
together. And
I
so
can see that happening.
yes, and so I've had that happen. So don't say, "Oh, we don't have space. We don't have an extra bedroom." Don't let that keep you from it, because they can share a room and they have just as good of an experience
At
from
any
that.
given time through a school year, what do you average? Not any given time, just during the school year, how many kids do you average placement a year in Ouachita Parish, or in the general Northeast
Okay, yeah.
area that you
So,
cover?
it ranges. It just depends on families, how many, how can I get out there? I try to go do table events and try to get out in the community and bring awareness to the program. Very thankful for this platform to be able to do this as well. Just getting the word out about it. But I typically have anywhere from 6 to I've had 16 before. This year I have 8, which one of them went home in December. He was a 5-month student. So
Does that happen often?
we do have a few that are 5-month, but not all schools will accept the 5-month students. Only Neville High School will accept the 5-month.
Why would they do a 5-month instead of the other, just length of time,
Length of time, yeah.
being away from home?
Yeah. And then when they get here, they're like, man, I wish I would have done the 10-month, because it is very quick. But we have a few, not many do the 5-month, but yeah. So, and I love the bigger the group, the better, because our monthly things that we do and get-togethers, they really enjoy hanging out. I had one group one time, they were together constantly. Like the host families will open their homes and all the students will go hang out with them. And so, but yeah, so I can place however many families I can find. So don't let, numbers stop you from hosting.
What if there's a host home, and this is like me kind of reaching, but what if there's a host home that is big into homeschooling,
Okay.
and they prefer all their kids are homeschool kids?
Right.
Is that acceptable, or will they have to go to a public school?
They do have to go to a school. It has to be an accredited school for them to be able to attend.
Okay.
So, but we have had homeschool families host, and the student would go to school and then they'd come back home, and it was fine. So we have had that.
How can we help you get the word out about this? What are things that we, this podcast, but also just the community? Is there any type of exposure you have to the community? Is there a way that the community can get involved to help get the word out?
Yeah. So, my biggest thing is I just say bringing awareness to the program. My host families are my best, advertisements, right? So I'm like constantly, hey, if y'all are doing something cool this weekend, like make a post, let everybody know what you're doing with your exchange student. I try to make posts, and I get, like, tell me a testimony of like what's something fun you did with your student this month, and I'll make a post about that, and so I do it all on my personal page, but just my host families are the best way to get the word out because they're having these experiences. And a lot of times, like, I can tell you about the program. Now, I have hosted, so I've been on both sides, but they want to sometimes, like, even Pamela, I was like, here, call this lady. She's hosted before.
Yeah.
Get a perspective from somebody else. My February event, I always invite families who are interested in hosting. I'm like, hey, why don't you come and meet some of our students and meet some of our families and just kind of see what it's like a little bit. Because some families are very intimidated by it. So I guess just like I try to get out as much as I can. I try to get people to share my post about hosting, and just bringing awareness to the program and just bringing awareness that it's not scary. It's a really neat opportunity for your family, and you're literally changing the world by hosting.
I think it's really good for this. Another reason is that I think it brings things to our community that can expose us to things that we don't really know much about.
Right.
I think living in the South has got a lot of cool opportunities for many people. I think because we still are a small town, it allows us, for people like me and you, to be able to meet and be able to share this story with our community, to say that we are a small town, but we have something great to offer people.
Absolutely.
And you open my eyes because I'm sitting here thinking, why would somebody want to come here? But you just don't think about some of the small things, the luxuries that we have here that others don't have, that a lot of times, because we have it, we take it for granted.
Absolutely.
And thanks for just kind of reminding us of that we have something to offer here, which I always knew we had something to offer. But I wouldn't think that, people looking at American culture would, but we have a lot to offer people here. So I'll speak to the camera and just say, guys, that if I've had a great time with this podcast, and I think that there's more that we as a community can do to help support kids from across the world to be able to come in and experience the things in life that we love and enjoy. And even if we're changing the world one kid at a time, it gives us an opportunity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great people in history across the world that have done some amazing things because someone invested a little bit in them.
Absolutely.
So thank you for what you do.
Yes,
this is a great story. I hope we get a lot of exposure for you guys.
Thank you.
I can't wait for you to update us on how we're growing as a community, servicing international students as they come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time to watch or listen to this podcast.
We really appreciate your involvement. Please leave us a comment, or even better yet, subscribe to this podcast and hit that notification bell so that you can be alerted for every new episode when it hits.